2781 United Front. Not here, either. The answer to Cassie's condition kept eluding her. She grasped a different memory and absorbed it, learning the meaning of maddening thirst that could never be quenched unless fragrant blood was spilled. In that memory, she was Seishan, the lost princess of song. Looking into the window, Seishan could not help but think of time. Time had no power over her mortal vessel anymore, but it was difficult not to feel like it was leaving her behind. Outside the window of a spacious manor that stood on the great bridge of Ravenheart, ash rained upon the blackened walls of the Jade Palace. It was strange to look at the palace where a vast span of her childhood had taken place. From the outside, it was also peculiar to see Ravenheart completely transformed, having turned into a sprawling city in the blink of an eye. Seishan had been disoriented after returning from the Forgotten Shore. The world seemed to have changed entirely in the decade she missed, becoming almost unrecognizable. The undercurrents governing the awakened society had shifted, the skyline of NQSC looked different, the people whom she knew were gone. Her sisters, who had looked up to her, were now all of a higher rank than her, having grown up and become adults, those who survived, at least. They had experienced life in all its many colors, while all she had experienced was the blood-red darkness of the Forgotten Shore. They had outgrown her. Seishan had never been one to surrender, though, so she steeled her resolve and dove into this unfamiliar world, swiftly making up for the time she missed, only to be thrown into the bloody, dirty war between the great clans. Now, 10 years after her return, the world had changed once more. The great clans were gone, Ravenheart had grown into a vast city, and someone else now lived in the Jade Palace. The pace with which time erased the present and built the future was almost too great to comprehend. But if people were good at one thing, it was adapting to change. Only the fittest survived, and Seishan was the best at surviving, no matter the cost. So, perhaps this terrifying era was a good fit for her after all. Looking away from the window, she sighed. Things are changing again. Her scarlet lips twisted in displeasure. Walking toward the door, she spoke to the blood sister waiting silently by the wall. Felice, invite my sisters to the parlor. The Song clan had found itself in an odd limbo. Officially, it did not exist anymore, however, unlike Clan Valor, it had never been systematically dismantled by Mordred. So, its core forces simply split to follow the 7 transcendent princesses that Queen Song had left behind, spreading across the basin of the River of Tears. Each of the former princesses was now a ruler of her own clan, technically. However, they were still sisters, and therefore, the ghost of Clan Song wielded immense influence in the West. In fact, its power was second only to the immortal flame itself. Seishan and her sisters ruled a number of citadels, even if some of them did not govern the cities that had grown around those citadels themselves, instead entrusting THAT duty to loyal advisors. Beastmaster spent most of her time in Ravenheart. Lonesome Howl and Silent Stalker could usually be found on the front lines, leading the warriors of the human domain in their conquest of the Dream Realm. Moonveil controlled the estuary of the River of Tears, while Seishan herself controlled its source. Deathsinger wandered between the worlds, often crashing at their citadels. Revel. Well, Revel was a proponent of a strict separation between work and private life. So, she had refused the citadel offered to her by Nephis, preferring to stay in her den below the Jade Palace when she wasn't leading troops into battle. And now, in an ironic twist of fate, she was on the Forgotten Shore. Seishan headed toward the parlor, full of heavy thoughts. She and her sisters were scattered across the Dream Realm, but today, they gathered in Ravenheart once more. Meeting in NQSC would have been far more convenient, but the situation was dire enough to demand a united front. Hey there, Sean. Beastmaster was already in the parlor, lounging in a chair with a glass of red wine in her hand. Her dress was flattering enough to be considered perilous, and her languid smile was positively decadent. The scar that was supposed to mar the deadly beauty of her face was somehow only making it more alluring. She seemed the same, but Seishan could tell that her sister felt more relaxed, somehow. The fall of the Song domain was treating her well, as she had been able to blossom as the logistical overlord of the western reach of the human domain instead of being a powerful, frightening witch who controlled an army of monsters. Despite her dark mood, Seishan could not help but smile. Hey, Ben. The door opened, and Lonesome Howl entered, immediately sprawling across a sofa with an exhausted sigh. Do you have food in this manner? Gods, Stalker and I had to rush back to Ravenheart across entire regions of the Dream Realm. Our essence is almost entirely gone. As soon as she said those words, Seishan noticed that Silent Stalker was already leaning on the wall in the corner of the parlor. It was unclear when and how she had gotten there. Beastmaster scoffed. So what? You don't hear Stalker complaining. Right, Stalker. Silent Stalker just stared at her without saying a word. Beastmaster grinned. See, at that moment, Moonveil entered the parlor as well, gifting them a soft smile. You really should not complain, Howl. I had to rush here from the shores of the Stormsia, so, if anyone is going to complain, it should be me. Finally, Death Singer arrived, looking at them with a pale face and terrified eyes. Beastmaster winced. Let me guess, hell. We're all going to die. Death Singer gave her a look of incomprehension. What? No, of course not. A mournful expression appeared on her face. Instead, we're all going to be brainwashed and turned into obedient slaves. Our free will be trampled upon by a wicked supreme. Our minds will be broken. Oh, the shame, the humiliation, the anguish. Seishan sighed. 2782 Prudent question. By now, they knew that Astarion was back. Nephis was going to address the top brass of the human domain today, but actually, a different, far more secretive meeting had already happened on the day that the Dreamspawn revealed itself. There had been far fewer people attending that meeting, and they left it with an ominous feeling. Seishan had been one of them. So, it's really true. That man is back. Beastmaster's voice was laced with unease. Nephis had only been 4 when her father died, so she did not remember the Dreamspawn too well. The contact between the Immortal Flame Clan and Broken Swords companions had not lasted long after his death. However, the Song Sisters were older and had a far clearer impression of the man who called himself Astarion. In fact, he had still been around when Seishan ventured into the Dream Realm for the first time. It was only after returning from the Forgotten Shore that she learned about his disappearance. Honestly, it had been a relief. Astarion was charming and affable, treating Ki Song's daughters well. However, there had always been something unnatural and creepy about him. The Song Sisters grew up as princesses of the great clan Song, but they had been orphans before then, and orphan children had a special kind of intuition about adults. So, they never liked the third sovereign very much. Lonesome Howl sighed. Does it even make sense? She sat up and looked at her sisters with a disgruntled expression. It is like, your mom passed away, you were evicted from your childhood home, and if that wasn't bad enough, your creepy uncle suddenly returns from prison. Oh, and it had been your mom who sent him there, in the first place. She bit her lip. Do you think he's going to revenge against us, since we're all that remains of Song? Moonveil opened her mouth to answer, but at that moment, Death Singer interrupted her with an innocent question. By the way, where's Revel? The others looked at her with inscrutable expressions. Eventually, Seishan answered her in a calm tone. She's with the Lord of Shadows on the Forgotten Shore. Death Singer blinked a couple of times. Huh, why? Seishan shrugged. He invited her to join the Shadow Domain. So, she lives there with the Lord of Shadows now. Due to. Death Singer jumped. She what? Silent Stalker shifted slightly and gave Seishan a questioning look, too. Seishan tilted her head a little. She has become a champion of the Shadow Domain. I know that this is sudden, and that our soldiers will suffer without her strength, but Revel and the Lord of Shadows are a good fit. Her powers will serve humanity well at the head of the Shadow Clan. Death Singer stared at her in shock, then looked away and said in a trembling voice, that traitor. Wow, what they say is true, it's the quiet ones you should look out for. Silent Stalker looked at her and frowned. Seishan studied the two of them for a moment, then turned to Lonesome Howl. To answer Yuji's question, it doesn't matter whether the Dreamspawn seeks revenge against us or not. He'll come for us regardless, to make us part of his domain. Beastmaster smiled bitterly. Unless we submit to him first, right? After all, we've already abandoned a domain once. Their mother had been killed by Changing Star, and yet, they now serve the Immortal Flame. A silence settled between the Song Sisters. Moonveil broke it a few seconds later, asking a question in a light-hearted tone. It seems that a clash between the Longing Domain and the Hunger Domain is inevitable. So, it is only prudent to ask if we want to blindly put our loyalty into Changing Star or if betting on the side we consider to be winning is a better choice, isn't it? Seishan had not shared Astarion's ultimate goal with them yet, and she remained silent now as well, curious to hear what her sisters would say. Moonveil chuckled. Gods, why are you all so serious? I've asked the question, so I'll answer it first. I want to follow Changing Star, regardless of what side looks to have the upper hand. Seishan raised an eyebrow. Why? Her sister shrugged with a faint smile. Because I crossed swords with her before. What I saw that day makes me want to put my faith in her. Oh, and I really hope to never have to fight her again. Lonesome Howl leaned back and sighed. Same, only it's the Lord of Shadows I never want to fight again. Death Singer looked into the distance with a resentful expression, then nodded reluctantly. Yeah, even if he has been led astray, I am still on his side. I'll always be on his side. Beastmaster laughed. Then, however, her expression grew somber. The question is moot. Nephis is the human domain. Without her, it will cease to exist. And I quite like the human domain. So, I have no desire to surrender to that eerie man. Silent Stalker just shrugged and then nodded. Seishin remained silent for a while. Good, because the Dreamspawn does not have the best interests of his subjects in mind. Instead, it's the opposite, people only exist to become his thralls, and his thralls only exist to fuel his power. So, we'll be in mortal danger in any case of whether we submit to him or not. She gave her sisters a cold look. Which is why we will fight for the human domain until the last drop of blood. Do you understand? They hesitated for a few moments, then nodded. Seishin looked back to the window and fell quiet. Eventually, she said, it's time to go. Revel will meet us in NQSC, whatever happens from now on, take care of each other. We will see this storm through and emerge on the other side unscathed. Survival of the fittest. Her sisters would have to learn how to adapt, as well.